Hi, this is Len Farnett. Thank you for watching my video. I've done a few videos on some pretty boring stuff, so this one I really like. It's going to be one on dynamic CSS. If you're familiar with CSS, it's the thing in the background of most newer websites that, I say newer, I was making websites back in like '95, and CSS didn't really exist then. You just basically made a page, and you were lucky if you could put a couple of images on it, and this and that and the other. But as time went by, sites got bigger, and there were hundreds of pages, and then a company would come in and tell the webmaster, you know what, you need to change the color on every one of these pages. So they started using this neat little trick called cascading style sheets. I'm sure you're familiar with it if you're watching this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the view page source of my page, and I'm going to show you a little trick that I've learned about CSS. Now, CSS in itself is really nice because you can change a lot of stuff in the CSS. I'm going to go to a CSS file for one of my sliders because that's still a default CSS, and it's got some classes in there and all. And a class is basically what tells an element of your site what it wants to happen there, and it does things like sets colors, it sets margins, it sets padding, stuff like that. And here's one for a Nevo slider. This is the slider that's on the front of my site. I should probably make this one dynamic too, but I've got a lot of dynamic elements in my CSS file. But what's fun about this here, and I'll close this source out, is, for example, my site uses radiuses at the top of the site, and I've got two sliders. I've got a Nevo slider in the front that changes images pretty frequently. It's kind of chopping up a little bit now because I've got the Camtasia running along with this and a couple other things. But also got a slider in the background that changes, I think it's like every 9 or 12 seconds. I'll get into that in just a second and show you. But in order to make the background slider usable, I've got opacity set in my front page. And what's really neat with the opacity is I can change the opacity of the front page to reflect either a more transparent thing or less transparent. I'm going to go to 65 on the opacity here, and we'll go back to the front page and refresh, and when we do, we can see that the opacity is down to 65, meaning you can see a lot more through here. Now, this is all handled by a CSS file, and once again we're going to go to the source, and this is my dynamic CSS file. You'll notice it's not called CSS, it's called PHP. That's because it's a PHP file. The reason it's a PHP file is because PHP uses variables, and by nature of the term variable, that means you can change things. They're variable. And what creates the clearness in the background is it uses 3 parameters for the color, which is red, green, blue, and then it uses 4 parameters, red, green, blue, and an alpha. And this alpha is right here. It's the 0.65, and 100 is solid, and 0 is completely transparent. There's absolutely nothing there if it's 0. 65 is the current thing that I've set it to, and if we go back, let's get out of the view source here, go back to the page, you can see it's 65, and you can really see the background through there. Only problem with that is if you look at the words on my website, they're kind of hard to read, and then if you start looking, immediately you get blown away by the background changing behind it. So it's a little too opaque. So I've got two solutions here. I can go to my CSS, back to the view source, to my CSS, and then in order to change this opacity, I've got to change this number here. I've got to change it also here. I've also got to change it here. Also got to change it here. you get the point. There's a lot of places I got to make this change. And then what happens if I go to 75, I put that in 5 times, I've FTP'd it up to my site, I've got it at 75, and then I don't like 75. Well, then there's a whole lot more I got to do. But what I've done is I've taken my variable here and I've put it into a database, which I can pull through a PHP file. And I've built an admin system into my site which allows me to do whatever I want to. Now, I've played around with this enough to know that 88 is the setting I like. So I'm going to just go to 88 and move forward with this video so we're not just dwelling on that the whole time. But I'll get into the file now and what it is that you want to use for your file. Now, you can make any website dynamic if it uses a CSS file and you use PHP and you use MySQL. And you don't even need the MySQL. Your CSS file, if it has multiple things in it that use the same variable, like for example web width, I can set the width of my website, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 places that require the knowledge and use of web width within my system. So web width is a variable, and how I address that variable is through a page function page, but I'm going to show you a quicker way to do that. Let's say you don't want to get into databasing or anything like that. What you would do is you would put a variable up here called web width, W-E-W-I-D-T-H. You'd call this variable web width, and you would say equals, and you would put a number. In my case, it's 1,000. And then you would put a semicolon behind that. That's a colon, semicolon. And now, if you want to change web width anywhere within this CSS file, all you would have to do is put, like I have here, instead of body minimum width 1,000 pixels, you would replace 1,000 with echo web width, and you would put that anywhere where you have this 1,000. And then that way, if you want to change this from 1,000 to say 900, all you've got to do is just change this once up here, and it will echo this web width throughout the entire document. So since I have this variable already somewhere else, and I'm going to show you that, I'll take this out of here, get rid of that for now because we don't need that. But anyway, all of your variables need to be within a PHP block, and then you reference them in the site outside of the PHP. I've got a lot of PHP in here because I've got functions. This particular function changes the hexadecimal value of a color into a red, green, blue, and I've got this function in 2 places with 2 different names. The first one gives it a comma delimited set, and the second one gives it an uncommon. The reason being because Internet Explorer has there are 4 places on this line, 4 places on this line where that result needs to show up, and then with the comma delimited result it needs to show up here and here. And all of these 12 variables, there are actually 2 variables but 12 instances of them, control what I showed you in the very beginning, which is the opacity. So anyway, we're back to this. Let me close everything out here so that I don't screw around with my file too much, because I don't want to change anything in that file. But let me show you how I get these variables out of my database. I've got a query in here for a thing that I call a top spacer. And basically this is the space, the amount of space on my website that is the space between here and here. And I didn't want my website to go right up against the top of the browser. I wanted there to be a little bit of space there, but that space, sometimes I'll want to change that. Maybe I don't feel like digging through my files and everything, because I've got an admin system that I've built for my database. And if I go to my CSS edit system in my admin, and I go down here and I look for website top gap spacer. Click on that. You'll see that this is a CID, which stands for CSS ID, equals 46. This is my PHP file that allows me to edit the record. Now in my record, I have a name, I have the ID number, I have the element's value, which can be a color value, a hexadecimal, it can be any one of a number of things. I use these for everything. For example, my logo is a URL to an actual logo file. So if I want to change my logo, I don't have to go in and change a file. All I have to do is change the URL. Same with my header. I've got this theme right now, don't go bananas over your next website. So I've got a header file that's bananas. I've got another header file that's a standard menu, another header file for Christmas, another header file for New Year's. I've got all kinds of different header files. The thing about the CSS system I have is they're all handled with values, and these values are all variables that go into either the CSS file or the web file itself and handle that. I've got a different system that handles all of the content of my pages and all of the content of my blogs, and even files these videos away. I've also got a description here because I've got so many different functions that sometimes it's kind of hard to keep track. So in this one it says sets a gap at the top of the website content. Set about 35 or so looks good. However, to set it so it looks good with your own special arc effects and rounded corners. So I'm going to move this value from 35. I'm going to go ahead and sometimes I just like to watch the slideshow in the back of my website, so I'm going to set this for 1,000. And when you hit that, you'll see that when we go back to the website and refresh, it's going to throw that completely down off the bottom of the page. And it's gone. Now if I go down, it's there, but now I can sit here and just watch my slideshow if I want to. I can hit F11 on my computer, and I'm not going to do that with Camtasia running. But yeah, you can, this class right here, and so I'm not freaking anyone out who might be coming to my website and they're going, oh wow, you know, where did this website go? Because it does this across the entire website. So I'm going to go back to the 35. Well, I think it was 35 I had. But anyway, 35 should be okay. But now you refresh that and there it goes. But looking back down here in the source file again, view page source, that comes from this CSS file which I showed you, and that also comes from, if you go to the head section right here, the class is container 16 and spacer, and the spacer, that's the class in the CSS file that changes when I change it in the dynamic side of the file. And another neat thing with using dynamic CSS is the idea that you can also save everything in your system. I've built another file, another table in my database. It's not as comprehensive as my CSS file, but it's basically, it holds two values. It holds the ID number and it holds the actual value. It doesn't hold the comments or anything like that. But if I go to restaurant theme here and hit save this theme, that way I've saved it, what I've got currently going on there. So I can go back to my system here and go into my snapshot system. I've got a New Year's theme. So use the New Year's theme, come in here, click, and you can see, watch the header, everything's, it's kind of different. So maybe I hit the wrong New Year's theme because I've got a couple of them. Sometimes I've been known to save something over something, and maybe this is one of those times. Okay, let's go with beaches. Use the beaches theme, because I'm going to figure out what I did with that other one, but for right now we'll go to beaches. And you'll see that the beaches theme was before I made the rounded header and all that. But here's my beaches theme. I've saved that, and it's completely different. And so I can go back to this system here, snapshot system, and I'll get my restaurant back. Use this theme. All done. And I go in and refresh, and now I've got my restaurant back. So anyway, that's the CSS side of dynamic CSS, and all you have to remember to do is on the top of your actual page, you call your file a css.php, and once you've called your file a css.php, you go to your CSS file and you rename your CSS file PHP. You put a PHP header on here and content type of text CSS. And if, like me, you're using a database and you have the functions inside the database, you would want to include that file. You'd also want to include a connection file. If you're not using a database and you're using the variables like I showed you before, you just simply fill this up with variables that you want to change throughout your site, and then you don't have to go poking through your file all the time to find those variables. And I'm going to real quick show you the page functions again. All this does here, each of these in between the commented lines, each of these is a query to my database, and this says select CSS value from CSS values where ID equals 46, limit 1. This takes that one value and turns this into a variable. It'll turn it into, first I turn it into this variable. I do HTML entity decode so that it gets away, it doesn't display any oddball characters or whatever. And then this top space, this is the variable that I use wherever. And so in my database itself, top space is a number, and that number is assigned through the sheet that I have given for top space. And go to here and all the way to the bottom, website top gap spacer, and I put the comments section in so I can put and add all kinds of comments about it or whatever. I might add a second element value, then again I might not, I don't know. I've added a different set of unum type stuff with where I can select whether it's a text color, whether it's an effect, because I have different pages in my system that handle those different types of elements. For example, text colors, all I have in here are text colors, and I can change the color of the main text body. I can change the color lengths. I've got a color wheel that I use to change all of my colors with. I can just pick what I want off the color wheel, the right shade and everything. There's over 17 million possible colors. I'm not going to change a color right now. There's just a lot of neat stuff that you can do with CSS that you can make dynamic. All of these radiuses can change. You can just set up a lot of stuff. And what I'm going to do is in the description I'm going to give you a link where you can go to get more information on dynamic CSS. If you know how to make dynamic CSS and you're familiar with PHP, you're familiar with MySQL, this is a really fun thing to work on. It's working with databases isn't always the most fun thing in the world, but when you're doing something that's aesthetically pleasing and it really has a great result, it can be a lot of fun. You can do a lot with it. Anything that's in your CSS system you can put into a database and manipulate that way. That way you can change your site around all the time, anytime, whenever you feel like it. And it's just really cool. The other thing I want to say is if you don't know how to do this and you think it's just a really, really cool thing and you don't want to learn it, I am a freelance web developer, and I can take your existing site and your existing CSS and make a system that'll do this. Now, if I make a system from scratch that'll do this, it's probably not going to be a really cheap thing, but how would you like to be able to just go to your website and say, hey, you know what, that green is just not happening for me in the background, so or, well, since I'm right here right now, let's say I don't want this tagline to be green, so I'll just go over here, color of the tagline text. Let's say I want the tagline to be red. Switch things up. Okay, I'll just go to red, find a nice bright red color, hit OK, hit foobar. I don't know why I called it foobar, but I was just playing around with it, and when I got it to working it didn't matter. So anyway, you see this is green now, and watch, now it's red. I also have shadows behind this. The shadows are green, but I can change the shadows to red as well, which is in the regular system here. Go down here and it says tagline contents shadow. Okay, this used to be the logo. Since I had a regular logo, there was a shadow pixel effect, shadow spread size, then you got colors of the tagline, colors of the background, color, there's a lot of functions in here, and I'm getting to the point where I'm having to sort them out. But you know, you can change anything that can be shown into your CSS or into your website. You can change through PHP dynamically, and it's a really fun project. Like I said, if you want to have this done and you don't feel like going through the hassle of doing it yourself, want me to tell you how much I would charge to do it for your site or whatever, that's fine. If you can do it yourself, this is going to be one of the most fun, rewarding projects that you do. It's not something that you'll start on and it'll be done tomorrow, but it's something that you'll start on, and by the time you get it done, you'll just be like, wow, this is, you know, this is the coolest thing ever. I wish I had this before. And that's about it. Have a good one. Thank you for watching.